Okay, so let's start the introduction of PHP programming language. So let's first start, what is open source? If you know, PHP is a programming language which is considered as open source programming language. So let's try to understand what is the meaning of open source. Open means whatever it's available, freely available, right, which is not closed, so that is open. So open source is, you already know, if you have written C programming, I mean if you have written the program in C language, then you know what the source code is, right? Include statement, then printf statement, scanf statement, all those statements are considered as a source, right? So this PHP language, the source is available openly, means anybody can download, anybody can use the source, right? So that the whole language is freely available. So that is the meaning of open source is. Now whenever it is open source, it is freely available. Okay, now the question is that in which language the source is written, right? The source is openly available, so there has to be some programming language in which the source is written. So the answer of this question is C and C++. Okay, so the PHP language itself is created using C and C++. Okay, now as you know, C is a structured or procedural level programming language, and C++ is object oriented programming language. So in PHP, both kind of programming you can do. You can do procedural level programming as well as object oriented programming, and you can even mix it also. Okay, so that is a little bit about open source. And if you want to get the source of the language PHP, then the official website of PHP language is php.net. okay, so that is little bit about what is open source. Now we have to understand what is the difference between free and open source, right? They are not same. Okay, let me give you one example. See, if I create a program using C language, okay, now when I give the executable freely available to everyone, then it is a free program, but I have not given the source code to people. So even though the program is free, it is not open source, because source is still with the the creator. When the person gives the source code away as well as its executable, then in true sense it is open source. So even if the program can be free, but not necessary it is open source. It can be closed source also. The creator has not given the source code to people, but only the executable. Okay, you understand? Now many people ask me that if the source code is also free, executable is also free, then how people will make money? Who will pay them? And why they will write this kind of open source programs? Correct? Because there is no money involved. It can be downloadable freely. See, not every company or not every person can open the source code and change it, or if there is any problem, they cannot solve this problem by themselves. So in that case, they always need the help from the creator, right? So that way the creator will charge money for the support, maintenance, upgradation, those kind of things they will charge, and that is how they will make money. Okay, so you understand the open source philosophy of doing business as well as giving the software away. And whenever it is open source, there will be so many programmers, so many people will download the code, they will see the code, they will even change the code or suggest the enhancement. So that's the reason open source software quality is much higher than closed source, right? For example, if you take the example of Windows operating system and Linux operating system, right? Linux is open source, you already know that, and Windows is closed source, which is created by the Microsoft company. Now just a simple example, that how many times you hear that I have a problem of virus in Windows? Many times, right? But have you heard about virus problem in Linux system? Probably never, right? So now you can understand that how secure and safe Linux system is, because it's open source. So many developers see the code, they change it, they secure it, and that is how then people use it. So even the whole internet infrastructure, right, servers and all those things, majority it's based on Linux servers, right? It is open source. So that is little bit about open source, and now you understand the difference between free and open source. Okay, understand? All right. So we just talked about say Microsoft, right? So if anybody says that okay, there is a .NET technology, then people know that which company is associated with this technology, right? Which is Microsoft, right? Whenever people say that okay, I'm using Java, so Java is associated with one company name. Earlier it was Sun Microsystem, but now it's Oracle, because Sun is taken over by Oracle. So now whenever it is Java, then the company name is Oracle. But when we call it PHP, then the name of the company is Zend. Okay, you can go to a website called zend.com. okay, Zend is the PHP company. Basically the founders or creators of PHP language started this company called Zend, and that is how it is PHP company. Even if you see it on their website, it is written Zend the PHP company. Okay, the founders of the company of Zend who have created this PHP language. Okay, now let's talk about why PHP language is useful. See, there are many programming languages, right? There are C, C++, Java, C Sharp, and there are so many other languages, even like Perl, Python, and so on. So why PHP is so popular, right? If you know Facebook, one of the world's largest social platform application, right, is created using PHP MySQL. So why PHP? The reason of using PHP is the whole language is created specially for web application. There is no other purpose of creating this language. It was solely created for web application development, right? So it is very easy to use, it is also very flexible. Now this PHP language, the development started during 1993 to 1995. okay, so today it's 2013, so it's been more than how many years? Probably 18 to 20 years of development happened in this language, right? So that is the reason now this language is very powerful. Lots of libraries are available, so lots of ready-made functions, classes, applications are available in PHP, and there are thousands of programmers available, right? So this language is easy, flexible, fast also, right? So these are, you know, several reasons why PHP is useful. Okay. So let's talk about you know, PHP is a language created for web application. Now whenever we talk about web application, now the web word comes into picture. Now web is mainly internet, right? Web, we use it for internet. So on internet, you know, there has to be a server from which this application is delivered, or in now fancy words, you are you know, hearing cloud computing. So everything, all data and your whole application is in the cloud. In the cloud means on the server, right? So let's understand what is server. Okay, is it hardware or software or both? It is software. I mean, see, any machine is ultimately hardware and software, right? So for server there has to be a machine, so obviously hardware is there. Typically you know, the hardware of server is you know, little bit you know, on higher side. It means there will be more RAM required, you know, more space is required, so hard disk space is larger generally, right? So that is you know, the characteristic of hardware. It means whenever it is a server, we give, I mean, or we you know, allocate you know, higher memory and higher space. Okay, but majority, when we say it's a server, then we are considering the software part, because there are so many different kind of servers, right? There can be a web server, there can be FTP server, there can be mail server, there can be database server, you know. So those kind of different servers are there, and that way it is nothing but a program. It is a special program which runs, you know, say 24 hours, right? It doesn't stop, right? Generally it doesn't stop, because, you know, your client or your request can come at any time, and you have to cater to that request, right? So you have to give service. So that way server program is always running, ideally always running, correct? Because your website visitor can come at any time, right? So your web server has to be running, correct? So server is nothing but a combination of hardware and software. Typically hardware, you know, more RAM, more space, or hard disk is larger. And in terms of software, there will be different kind of softwares, right? Web server is a different software. FTP server is a different software, you know, which handles only the file transfer. Or web server is useful for HTML documents, or handling the you know, PHP request fulfillment. Okay, so that is server. Now typically whenever we are talking about PHP, we'll be talking about LAMP or even WAMP. Okay, so let's try to understand what is LAMP. See, LAMP stands for Linux, A for Apache, L for Linux, A for Apache, M for MySQL, and P for PHP. But not necessary last P is for PHP, it can be for Perl or Python. Okay, let's understand it little bit more. See, any hardware or any machine will require operating system, right? So typically it will be Linux or Windows. Okay, so majority in production machine, or where the real website or web application will be there, over there majority Linux will be the operating system. For development purpose, many programmers use Windows, so it can be Windows operating system. So in that case, you know, you can call it WAMP, right? W for Windows. Now A for Apache. Apache is also open source software which is used for web server, and Apache Foundation itself is a big foundation which provides free and open source softwares. So A for Apache, M for MySQL. Okay, now MySQL was a separate company earlier, but now it is taken over by Oracle. Right, so now it's a product of Oracle, but MySQL is still free and open source. Okay, so for database it is MySQL. It's not necessary that we only use MySQL with PHP. I mean, ideally it's a default combination PHP MySQL, but it is not necessary that with PHP you only have to use MySQL. And the last P is for PHP. It can be for Perl. Perl is older language than PHP, and earlier web development happened using Perl language. Okay, the full name is Practical Extraction and Reporting Language. It is a very powerful language, and many of the features are borrowed from Perl into PHP. And even Python, right, which is one of the biggest company which uses Python. The answer is Google. Google is heavily using Python language, and in many different other companies they use Python as well. Okay, so LAMP is considered as an open source development platform. Okay, and you can use Windows also as a platform, as operating system, and you can develop, and whatever you will create on Windows, the PHP code, whatever you will create, I would say 95% the same code, if you put it on Linux machine, it will work same way. Okay, hardly 5% code you need to change because of the folder and file path and all. Okay, and file permission and so on. So that is about LAMP. Now let's understand which knowledge is required to learn PHP. Right, you might have question that, okay, what do I need to know? Do I need to know even object oriented programming language? The answer is no. Even if you know only C programming, and in C even you don't need to know pointers in details, because pointer is one of the difficult topic for majority of people. So pointer is not there, so that's a relief for you, right? Structure is also not there. Okay, so pointer and structures are not there in PHP language, but majority of the things are there in PHP, like variable, then loops, functions, all those things are there. And if you do object oriented programming, then obviously classes and objects and so on, correct? But to start with, even if you are not very much comfortable with object oriented programming, you can still do procedural level programming in PHP, and that can be sufficient to even develop the web application. So you can learn that way. Now PHP is a web application development language, right? So you need to know HTML, because the whole output which PHP will create is using using HTML only, right? Along with HTML, if you know CSS, which is called cascading style sheet, and JavaScript, then it is little bit additional. But to learn PHP, it's not compulsory that you have to know CSS as well as JavaScript. Without that also you can write web application. But a real world typical web application always use CSS and JavaScript. So if you know it, then it is kind of advantageous, but not compulsory. It is optional. And whenever you create any application using PHP, obviously you need to deal with the data. You have to store data and so on, and for that database will be used, and majority of database will use SQL, right? So you have to know SQL. So in order to learn PHP, C programming, SQL and HTML, these three are very important. You have to know all these three, and then you can jump to PHP programming language. Okay, so I think I have already discussed when PHP started, right? It started in 1993, 1995. So now let's finish the last point, which is why PHP is a scripting language, right? You might have heard and read on the PHP.net official site, where PHP is a scripting language, right? So there is a special meaning uh, of this scripting, right? See, C is also a programming language, C++ is also a programming language, and PHP is also a programming language. And as you now know, PHP is created using C and C++. So do we call C as a scripting language? No. C++? No. Right? Then why PHP? So there are two major differences why PHP is considered as scripting language. First of all, PHP is a compiled language, interpretive language, right? And C and C++ is compiled language. It means when you create a program in C and C++, you compile and create the executable. Okay, exe file you create and that you run it. In terms of PHP, there is no executable, right? PHP is a interpreted language. It means the execution will happen line by line. Okay, from top to bottom, line by line execution will happen, and no exe will be created. So every time when you want to run PHP program, you need the source code to run it. Okay, so it is not creating the exe file. So that is the major difference between a normal programming language and scripting language. So generally scripting language are interpreted language. Line by line execution happens and you need the source code to execute the program. Right? Same thing if you consider JavaScript. So JavaScript also, there is no exe is getting created. You need the source code. And another difference is, in normal programming language like C and C++, can you use a variable without defining its data type? The answer is no, right? You have to say integer int I equal to 0, something like this, right? So you have to mention that the variable I is having the data type integer or float or character, whatever it is, right? In scripting language, there is no such need. It means you can use the variable without even defining the data type. Okay, in PHP, any variable starts with a dollar sign. So you can say $I equal to 20. And PHP language internally will see the value and will assign the data type to the variable. But as a programmer, you don't have to say that it is integer $I equal to 20. Okay, if you say 20.5, then the language itself will assign the data type float to the variable. So as a programmer, you are not defining the data type of a variable. So in scripting language, generally you don't define the data type of a variable, where in normal programming language you have to define the data type of a variable. Okay, so that is the difference between normal programming language as well as scripting language, right? So I hope you have got good understanding of what PHP language is, right? Just to summarize, PHP is a programming language, scripting language, mainly for web application development. Whenever it's a web application, you need the server, and for server you use Linux or Windows as operating system. Typically Apache as a web server. You can use different other web servers as well, but typically Apache is the only web server which is getting used. Same with MySQL and PHP. Okay, so that is LAMP platform, right? So what you need is that setup, nowadays there are lots of setups available called vamp or xamp and or even uniform server. So those kind of setups are already available, right, which install everything which you need for the development. It means that whole setup will have Apache web server, PHP programming language, as well as MySQL, and some other utilities like PHP-MyAdmin is one of the tool which is used to administer the MySQL database server. So all these kind of useful other softwares and these three servers, I mean three things, Apache, PHP and MySQL, all those are installed in just one single setup. Okay, so those kind of things are available, so that you have to have, and then you can directly start developing the PHP code. Okay, right. So I think that's about it for now, and of course we have discussed what is open source and what is the difference between free and open source, and how open source companies make money, right? So in the next session we will start the setting up this development environment and PHP programming.